Hello everyone, this is Rachel here, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for being with me for another YouTube Q&A video of the week. As you guys know, I put out these videos every week and they are based on the questions that you all send in. Really just whatever's on your heart. I answer it from my heart. I will let you guys know, I kind of have an announcement that my website is being revamped right now. It died. Something happened, it got a bug, it died out, and instead of repopulating the database and doing all this back stuff, I'm just having it redone completely. So I have someone that I hired to work on it and remake it, but all that being said, if you would like an appointment with me or want to contact me or really would just like to follow through with any sort of guidance, then I would encourage you right now, instead of going to the website, to email me or go to my Calendly page. My Calendly page, just Calendly, the Modern Shaman, has my online calendar, and that is how you can book appointments. Or you can just email me at themodernshamanemail@gmail.com. That's a great just way to get to me or my assistant, and we can help you in any way, shape, or form with getting appointments right now or questions you may have about my teaching programs and masterclass or the spiritual entrepreneur program. Any of that I can help with, but it's going to have to be via email right now while the website's being revamped. So that's my quick announcement before I get on to the video this week. Also, this week is a bit of a follow-up. So if you watched last week's video, I had just an epic anniversary trip to Egypt. It was something that it was like a bucket list. You know, I've always wanted to go to Egypt ever since I was a child. And if you're like me and have had a lot of past life energy and connection to that land, it's like every video that you watch, every documentary, it just feels like it's calling you home to that land. That's how it was for me. And so when I finally arrived there was a lot of homecoming energy for me. And I had a client that wrote in a couple weeks back and was like, will you please share some of your trip? So last week's video was on that. And today is kind of a part 2 because honestly, that video was super long, but there's so much to share. I shared literally the first day that we were there. That was just the first day we did the pyramids in the Giza Plateau. So there was a lot, 2 more weeks of trip down the Nile and to various temples and the Valley of the Kings and the desert. A lot of stuff that didn't get shared that I want to share with you guys today. And since I talked about the pyramid energy, I will talk a little bit about, so we did the pyramids and then we flew from Giza and Cairo to Luxor. And then we did a Nile River cruise to visit all of the temples and the Valley of the Kings in the desert and all of those sites. However, I will say I didn't talk about it on the last video, but we saw the Sphinx and we also saw the Mortuary temple or the embalming temple. That's what they call it. But this was actually my favorite temple out of all the temples that we visited in Egypt. It was the temple that is to the bottom left of the Sphinx. So when you're on the Giza Plateau, there are probably about 9 pyramid structures on that. There's the Great Pyramid, and then there's several other pyramids. There's the Queen's Pyramids, they call them, like the smaller structures. There's 3 of them in the front. But these all have a different architecture and makeup. And then there's the Sphinx. And to be honest with you, I wasn't super impressed with the Sphinx. The Sphinx it's just been very renovated. I think it's been the most renovated out of any of the structures we went to. So the old energy is, you really have to sit with it. And we didn't do like the VIP tour to actually like go down into the paws. So there's like a cage around it up above and you can't really go down inside like close to it. So the energy there felt very layered. I think if I had gotten to go down into the closer to the body or touch the body or just have interaction more from the back side of the Sphinx, like where the butt is, you know, that's like the older section. But I was near the front and it feels honestly like even the face feels revamped. It doesn't match the energy in the back of the body, and the paws are completely redone. So part of the Sphinx just feels like it's a mismatch of a lot of different cultural energies. That's what I picked up from it when I was there. It just felt almost like everybody wanted to claim that that was mine, and they put their little stamp on it. And there's a lot of energetic stamps on the Sphinx. Like, I feel like the face is different than the body. And, you know, and there's Sphinx statues because it is a symbol of power. Because when they represented animals or depicted in their iconography animals in the Egyptian culture, it is the presence of what that represents. It's very similar to Native American cultures and these ancient cultural understandings that when they depicted an animal, they were essentially claiming or owning the characteristic power or presence that that animal embodied. So much like when I teach shape-shifting, in ancient Egyptian culture, if they were to create a Sphinx and put the body of the lion, it would carry with it and imbue the person whose face, the pharaoh, whose face was on the body of the lion. It would imbue them, much like shape-shifting, with the energy of courage, of strength, of power, of kind of the king of the jungle type of energy. And so it was a symbol of that, but it was also a personified giving of that energy. So when you see the Sphinx, it feels like almost like there have been several pharaohs whose faces have claimed that energy for themselves. There's a sense of transition in the Sphinx to me when I was there energetically that didn't feel ancient, other than the butt. The butt felt ancient, but the front part felt very overlaid, which is beautiful in itself. A lot of overlays that also have meaning and purpose, but I wasn't necessarily drawn to it energetically, and it's much smaller. Like the energy itself feels less dominant than that of the pyramids. The pyramids have a much, much more ancient energy to them, to me. But the Mortuary temple, it's called different things, that temple. There's two temples by the Sphinx. Okay, so I want to be clear about this. It's to the bottom left, and it's actually lower on the plateau. So to me, it feels like it was there even before the Sphinx, because you have to literally walk upstairs on the plateau where the Sphinx is from that temple. So the temple's like right here, and then you walk upstairs to where the Sphinx plateau is. So there's a sense with that temple and the construction of this temple. It reminds me a lot of indigenous temples that are in even South America. It's to where it looks like molten rock, where the rock is poured, and the rocks themselves in the construction are all different sizes. So it doesn't look like it's quarried. There's a quarry literally right beside the Sphinx, but it doesn't look like it's even quarried from there, because the rocks themselves are strange oblong shapes. So some of them are huge, like 15 tons, and then some of them are small, and then some of them look like a T, and some of them look like a trapezoid. They're all different shapes, and they notch into one another like puzzle pieces. So they have almost like puzzle piece construction. And then the top part to where you can walk through the temple, where they create pillars. These are single pieces of stone. They weren't like manufactured like squares from a quarry. Even the pyramid is blocks that are shaped even though they may be different sizes, they are very systematically shaped. So it looks like blocks that my 5-year-old would have, right? And they're all the same, and they kind of place them, some vertical, some horizontal, to create the pyramid shape. Well, the mortuary temple is not like that. The construction is very distinctive, and the energy is super distinctive. There's also one strange black basalt stone in there, and I was super drawn to that stone. You walk in, and the temple is not very big. There's singular rows down the center, and then there's 2 side kind of columns. And then back here on the back wall, if you turn and look this way, there's this trapezoid shape black basalt stone on the bottom. And it's the same type of stone that the temple ground of the Giza Plateau kind of area, or the temple area, is made of. The stone floor of the plateau, right? So when you go up even higher on the Giza Plateau, there's like the mortuary temple, the Sphinx, and then up here are the pyramids. And they kind of rise up like this from the Nile riverbed and the ancient riverbed. And so when you're going up and up, there is a basalt floor, what I'm calling as the temple floor. It's essentially an open plateau area, but the flooring, like I shared on the previous video, is like probably 5 feet tall, just a floor rock. It's not a sheathing of rock. I mean, it is an entire quarried stone that is super tall. And this is the same type of stone. It almost looks volcanic because it's so weathered and soft. Another thing that was fascinating about this temple is that the corners are rounded. It's just, the construction is very distinct. So this was my favorite temple. And they said this was an embalming temple. The Egyptian tourism guide that we had with us said this was an embalming temple for the mummies to put in the pyramids, which didn't really make sense because the Great Pyramid, they didn't find any mummies in there. But that's what they've kind of titled it as, like where they would do the work on the bodies, and it was close to the pyramids. But to me, this felt incredibly holy, and I actually, similar to the way that I felt water in the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid, the energy feels like water here. And I'm assuming that the Nile riverbed came up close. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but I could feel the energy of as if even like water would have flooded in there and charged or amplified through. I just felt like it was super integrated. And as a shaman, I always feel very connected to elementals and the sensation of elementals around me and how things are balanced or ungrounded and not balanced. And this temple felt very, very grounded and very connected, almost with the underworld. And I don't mean underworld in terms of darkness, but I mean underworld in terms of internal world. I mean like meditation or fifth dimensional. We talk about third eye, the space of the psychic realm, the space of the what is kind of beyond our physical experience, where we go in to go out. This is what that temple felt like to me. Like an inward temple, a very underworld type of temple. A lot of the temple structures also in South America are like this, where they're built underground, where there's a sense of going inward. And it's not, I feel like it's misconstrued as like dark or evil, or this sense of like, when you say underworld or the death world or this, it has this kind of connotation to our culture that's negative, but it does not feel that way energetically. And even when I shared earlier in my previous video about the negatively charged side of the pyramid, it doesn't have negativity to it. It's a charge, just like when you're holding a magnet. Like, you don't feel evil coming from one side of a magnet because it has a negative charge on one side and a positive charge on the other. It's balanced, and there's purpose in that to absorb, just like a black stone or black clothing absorbs the light. There's absorbency there that's different. than a positive charge that will bounce or express out energy. So a lot of those temples, they kind of pull you in. They have this negative or underworld energy, and that's how that temple felt to me. I loved that temple. I could have spent way more time in that temple. And that black stone especially, it's interesting, the position of it, because it almost feels haphazard, like an accident. Of course, it wasn't, because none of that construction is an accident. It's very precise to even be able to hold the weight of a stone ceiling. The ceilings were stone, and these stones are like megatons to even hold that up. Like, we don't even make construction like that. Our ceilings are not stone. I mean, anyways, I could just go on and on about the mathematics, sense of precision, and architecture. And I know there's been tons of documentaries done on that because we still don't know how they did it. So anyways, it was precise, but that black basalt stone, I kept wanting to like sit right on it with my back and meditate on it. And we were just kind of like putting our hands, it's huge, it's probably about 7 feet tall. And I couldn't reach the edge of it with my arm span. Of course, I'm small, but still, it was a large stone. So, and like a weird trapezoid shape, and it wasn't quite, it was flat, but there's some curvature to it. And when you see these sites, because you know there's so much precision and intention behind everything that they do architecturally, when you see something like that, there's an awareness or a message that comes with it of like, this has purpose, this has intention. Why is this here? Like, it just almost like intuitively brings that up in you, where you want to connect with it because it looks like it has purpose. The same with these huge alabaster stones in front of the other temples where they would do sacrifices. I should talk about that. Y'all, it's been 20 minutes and I've talked about one other temple. This is what happens when I talk about something that I love. Let me move on to the other temples. Okay, well, maybe not. Let me just say, we did go to the Valley of the Kings, which is where all of the pharaohs were buried. We didn't do the Valley of the Queens, but which it's just like on the other side of the mountain in the desert. That was in Aswan. But I wasn't quite drawn to it. To me, it just felt like a really ancient cemetery. I'm not super drawn to cemeteries either. To me, like, the dead aren't there. I know a lot of people that are gatekeepers and they're light workers in this community, and they help those crossover that feel like they're kind of stuck or in between. But I've never been super drawn to that. And even as a medium, I feel like people's souls are eternal. Like, they're always alive. So I'm not... And I find them more connected to their past loved ones, places that they loved, things of genuine interest than their gravestone, or their tomb. Even though the Egyptians made their tombs like a home, right? I just wasn't super drawn to them. Energetically, the energy felt stale and old, and like their souls weren't hanging out there. I mean, we did see King Tut's actual mummy. There's a lot of mummies. We saw a lot of mummies. But again, this just feels like old flesh to me. I hope that's not offensive to some of you, not to take away anything that's sacred to other cultures. I just energetically, personally wasn't drawn to the tombs. It's like, I kind of like, once I saw it, I'm like, been there, done that. I wasn't, yeah. Anyways, they are interesting in terms of history, and I liked learning about them and seeing it with my own eyes. But anyways, wasn't that drawn to them. The temples, I loved how the temples were on water, because I feel like energetically this is such a powerful transmitter of energy. Water is so it's just like a reservoir of memory. If you've ever studied the molecular structure of how energy has impact on the molecules within water, water is just incredible. And a lot of the temples, because of transportation during that day, were put on the Nile. So the energy is so powerfully magnified. And then they used stone to create them. And a lot of the stone was granite, which has quartz in it. And quartz, as you know, I've done many videos on quartz or stones. It is also an amplifier and a transmitter of energy, right? We use it in our computers. We use it in phones. We use it in quartz. Is completely full of data storage and transmitting energy. So the power that you feel from these types of temples is very different than our current churches or our current any mosque or things like this that are built with concrete, or they're built in stucco or wood. If the construction is actually intelligently used for the amplification of energy and frequency. And I shared that in my last video where we were in the Great Pyramids, in the King's Chamber, and just barely humming, and it felt like we were in a acoustic microphone. I mean, like it was like stereo on steroids. It was so loud, and it felt like it was just moving through every aspect of me, and I was sitting inside of sound. It was phenomenal. This aspect of the temples is beautiful, and when the temples have been upheld with that structural integrity, like if they don't mess with it or they don't stucco or concrete over them, like some of them, if they're falling apart or they have a big crack in it, the UNESCO heritage site will let them put like concrete on in the inside of the crack to sustain it, but that messes with the frequency and the harmonic resonance of the energy that's felt. So sometimes certain pyramids, I was like, the energy isn't as potent here because there's just been more. They can't restruct it. Like if an earthquake broke one of the statues, they have to leave it down there, but they can fill cracks. So when they do that, it kind of shifts a little bit of the energy that you feel for those that are clairsentient or sensitive to all that's available within the temple. I will say when we went to Luxor, y'all, this is a 25-minute video already, and I'm trying to talk fast. I really am. I may have to do Karnak and Luxor and Abu Simbel in another video. I think maybe I'll do that. I will just end this video with saying that if you are a religious studies scholar, Egypt is phenomenal for that also, because the history, if any of you have studied world religions, there are so many themes, like the themes of the twins, like the good twin and the bad twin, Cain and Abel. This is very similar in so much originating religious culture studies. The Egyptians also had the virgin birth. They had Amenhotep, who had God was his father. His mother was human. It's very similar to the Christian story of Mother Mary and having God as the father and being essentially God incarnate because God is the father. So Amenhotep had this similar story, and that is literally in hieroglyphics in Luxor Temple on the wall. That's 3,500 years old. So that is like ancient history that has followed through a lot of the religious culture. They also have the story of Isis and really that whole her kind of as the goddess and her husband, and that whole process of his death and going into the underworld for 3 days and then being resurrected and kind of living in this otherly world. There's a lot of similarities there. There's similarities with baptism and purification. All their temples had baptism and purification of the sins, or the things that you carry that you need to cleanse yourself of before you come into the temple, and that structure of what felt like the body and essentially mimicking if you see the structure of the temples, they mimic the shape of kind of a body, like if you laid it flat. And there is a large space of where is the construction of putting your all of just ideas of devotion, or if you would do your sacrifices there and things you would give up, and state kind of like your devotion to the god or goddesses, and then you move into further and further spaces, holier and holier, until you're in the Holy of Holies, where they carry the holy relics and have the most powerful energy. And this is mimicked for the pineal gland. It mimics the same kind of spatial awareness as a brain, or moving up into the pineal and the pituitary, and a lot of that imagery is held there as well. Anyways, I could talk about that next time. Next time I'll move on to Karnak and Luxor Temple and Abu Simbel. How about that? Because there's so much there. And this is, again, already 30 minutes. I love you guys. I will be back here next week with another video. And let me know if this is boring to you, if you want me to move back to question and answer, because there's so much I could share. It's fascinating to me. Like, I love this stuff, but my channel is really for you guys. So if it's not as fascinating, and if you don't love it as much, I am more than happy to answer your questions that you have sent in. So let me know if you're interested in more of this. Probably one more video. I can also talk about the scarab. Oh, I love that whole aspect of the divine feminine, divine masculine. It's the perfect balance of male and female in one form. Anyways, so much I could talk about. All right, I'll be back next week with another video. Blessings, you guys.